Are you guys ready? Now, do you know what we're going to learn about today?
Stoichiometry.
I'm totally stoic about what we're going to learn today.
Stoichiometry.
I've been saving that one. Okay. Actually, someone taught it to me in first hour. Okay, we are going to learn about stoichiometry today. How many of you have heard of that? Are you recording as well?
Yeah.
I don't need two recordings of me.
This is for me.
Okay, you can do that. You can do
Nice
that.
try.
Now, how many of you have heard of stoichiometry before?
I've heard of it because I looked at the Canvas page and I asked.
Hey.
I heard about
good.
it 2 seconds ago.
Good.
I thought
Actually,
it was pronounced stoichiometry.
it is stoichiometry. It is not as hard as it sounds. It's actually quite simple. You don't blame me?
No.
Not sure.
If it's a simple.
First and second hour went quite well, stoichiometry did. So, really what it is basically just basic math and chemistry. We're going to learn about chemical reactions and the math of chemical reactions. Meaning, if you have this much of this, this is how much of this you're going to get. Now, we'll start with a basic reaction. The most basic one I usually use is water, because we like water, don't we?
Yeah.
I like water, at least. H2 plus O2 goes to H2O. Now, with these reactions, if they're not balanced, it will not work correctly. Okay? So, we have H2 plus O2. What do we need to do to balance that?
Put a 2 there.
Yeah, two.
2 right here? Because we have 2 O's,
Put them in
and then a 2 there. Okay. I'm going to change those actually to a different color just to highlight them. 2 and 2. Okay. Now, what's that mean?
Water.
Two waters.
We have our reaction there. It's kind of like a recipe for water, right?
Yeah.
Well, what does that mean? You take two hydrogen molecules and a water molecule, and you get and an oxygen molecule, and you get 2 water molecules, right?
Yes.
So that's why in the lab we get our molecular tweezers out. Hydrogen molecule. What do we usually deal with?
Fire.
Okay, sure. Fire. What do we usually deal with? We don't deal with molecules themselves, but what do we deal with?
Mixtures.
We actually haven't done this much yet. We're going to get into it more. Huh?
Wasn't that like yellow crap? A mixture?
Yes. It was not a mixture. That was a chemical reaction.
Kind of a mixture though, because you also make some water.
Afterward, you had water and this stuff left over. So I guess it was a mixture in the end. But what we deal with, instead of saying we have this many molecules or atoms of each, what do we say? Moles. There we go.
Oh,
hey, you
yeah.
guys did learn something. Moles. So we're going to say we have 2 moles of this, 1 mole of this gives us 2 moles of this. Because moles are a quantity that we can actually see and measure, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is we don't have a scale that measures moles, do we?
Yeah,
Do you guys
right
have a
there.
scale that measures moles?
It's the.
Well, that's a number. That's not a
Yeah,
scale.
that's a number.
Do you actually have like one of these scales that
Yeah.
I'm actually thinking of inventing this? But do you actually have a scale you can put something on there and you're like, yep, that's 3 moles of it?
Dude, you'd be awesome to do that.
I would. But do we have that in our lab? No, we do not. So we have to do it a different way.
Is it possible though, just like based on the weight?
Yeah, let's watch you.
I'm sure the Master of Science could.
I'll work on it. Okay. It is possible, but what we're going to do instead is we're going to be given things in grams,
Yeah.
right? We're going to weigh them out in grams.
Yes.
But then how do we get? Here's this. If this is in moles and we want.
We've kind of already done this
You
before.
combine the
I
whole.
think you taught us that.
It's this thing.
Yeah. So we're going to make it.
Into grams
We're going
and then you
to.
add
Okay.
them.
We're going to convert moles into. We're going to convert grams into moles or moles into grams, depending on which one we start with. If we start with grams, we need to convert it into moles in order to apply it to this equation.
Yeah.
But then in the end, we're going to want it in grams again. And so we will convert it back. So what we're going to do is we're going to convert to moles, convert to the other form. Let's say we convert to moles of it. We have grams of H2, we'd convert it to moles of H2. And then we'd convert it to whatever else we were trying to get to. If we were trying to get to H2O. And then we're going to convert it back into grams in the end. Now if that didn't make sense, that's okay, because I'm going to write it here in just a second.
Why wouldn't you just do the grams?
Why can't we just do grams to grams?
Because we're not.
Because if you have 5 grams of H2, is that equal to 5 grams of H2O in the end?
No.
It's not. But if you have 2 moles of H2, it is equal to 2 moles of H2O in the end.
Wow.
Okay? So let me go through this slowly, so it makes a little bit more sense if you haven't caught it yet. If you caught it already, you're doing awesome. If you haven't yet, you're okay. You're just normal. Now, Not an
A
insult.
little less than the average measure.
Maybe a little less than average.
Nothing
No, I said you're
important.
normal. You're normal.
Less
Okay,
than the average Nathan, just average.
Regular.
so we're gonna start. Let's say we're starting with 5 grams of H2, okay? And we wanna know how many grams of water that can make. So what I do is I start with 5 grams of H2. Now we can't go straight into grams of H2O, right? Doesn't work that way. That's not how our equation is written. So our first step is to write it in moles. Convert it to moles. How would we convert it to moles? We've done this before. Magic. Let's go. Convert to moles.
No,
Doesn't work. What do we do?
One, pretty much, 1 mole equals 1 gram.
Okay, it's H2 though.
So that's,
So it's 1 mole equals 2 grams.
1, yeah.
2 grams of H2 equals 1 mole. Okay, now, I was gonna change this because in previous classes, students were confused. They saw this 2 here and they thought that's where I was getting it from. Or they saw this 2 here and they thought that's where I was getting it from. I got this 2 from up there. Look under the H. You see how there's a 1 under the H?
Uh-huh.
That means for every mole of hydrogen, we have 1 gram. But in this case, it's H2, so we have 2 hydrogens together and we have a mole of that, so it's 2 grams.
Okay.
We good there?
And that applies to all of the ones that are underlined?
So, 2 grams of H2 is equal to 1 mole of H2. Right? No, that applies to everything. Oh, the ones that come in twos are all the underlying ones, you're right.
Yeah.
That's why it's H2 and not H.
So like for, lead, it would just be 207 per,
Yes.
yeah, okay.
But you must still, there could be a possibility of getting an H by itself. I don't know when. But
And not
with something
some.
else, like if you have HCl, you have 1 H and 1 Cl, so
Yeah.
17 plus 1.
But like if they're alone, then you just.
Actually, it's 35 plus 1. Okay, so 5 grams of H2, and we know for every 2 grams of H2 we have 1 mole. We got that from the periodic table, not from these 2s here. Those 2s will come into play later, or this 2 will. That 2 just told us we had 2 of them, that's why it had to be 2 grams instead of 1. We good?
Yes.
Lost anybody?
So if like, SE was just
Josh, are your
1,
arms tired?
would it be
Okay.
79?
SE?
Yeah,
Yep, it'd be 79.
okay.
Okay, so now we are in moles. We've done this before, right? We're still in familiar territory. Yes?
I was just saying, haven't we done this already?
Stretching your hand.
I was saying, haven't we already done this?
Yes, we have done this before. Now we're going into uncharted territory. Ready? This is crazy. You guys excited? Okay, we have 1 mole, we're now in moles of H2, but we want to convert it and find out how much it's going to produce. So we have moles of H2, we're trying to get to what?
Grams.
So we're going to say for every 2, no, well not yet. Can't get into grams yet. We're trying to get into H2O, right?
Okay.
Grams of H2O. But before we can go to grams of H2O, we have to go to moles of H2O. So we're going to say 2 moles of H2. Now this is where that 2 comes into play. See that red 2? That's why I put 2 moles down there. Because for every 2 moles of H2, we get 2 moles of H2O.
Yes, okay.
So on this step, this third step here, or second step, depending on what you call it, that one we just put the coefficients, or those balancing numbers in front. What we're coming from on bottom, what we're trying to get on top. We're coming from H2, we're going to H2O, right? So we're now in moles of H2O. See that?
Wait, what about the O?
Does it change anything?
What about the O?
Does the
Does the
O
O
change anything?
change anything?
We don't care about the O. Typically, when we have a problem like this, you'll say not O2, because let's say we're doing this in the, where air is readily available. No. Yeah, I should have said we have enough O2. So we have enough O2, we don't need to worry about it right now. We'll talk about it a little bit more later. But we don't need to worry about the O2 right now because we have enough. Okay? So we have 2 moles of H2 goes to 2 moles of H2O. We will need, you have to, the O had to come from somewhere, right? Okay, now what do we need to do?
Make that.
What am I gonna write down here?
1 gram.
1 mole of H2O.
Dang it.
You were close, Zach, you were close. Makes, how many grams of H2O?
2.
Yes.
We've done this before.
18.
18 grams of H2O.
Yeah.
Okay, and we're done.
Wait, how'd you get 18?
Because
16 plus 2.
Okay, so we have the 2 H's that are each 1, right? And then the O that is 16, all of them up there. So we had 16 plus 2. Okay, and there we go. we know it now. And we have, that one's gonna be 5 times 2 times 18, really times 1 as well, but I just skipped over it. So 5 times 2 times 8, that's 180 divided by 4, which is going to be 45 grams of H2O.
Equals.
That is our answer. Now, one thing to make note of, do not do 5 times 2 times 18 divided by 2 times 2 on your calculator, because it will divide by 2 and then times by 2. So if you want to do that, you'd have to put those in parentheses on the bottom, if you want to put it all in at once. So make sure you use parentheses. What's that?
Or you just say 4 and do it in your head.
Bam.
Oh yeah, it'd probably be better to do that one in your head. Okay, now that is stoichiometry. We're going to be moving on from here, and we're going to get you guys some practice. So, thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
That was 2 H's and 1 O.
It's a camera like it's from the house.
You can stop. 2 H's, each H is 1 from up there.
Stop.